The Galactic Throne was a place where every empire believed it controlled fate. A floating city of marble and crystal suspended above a blue-white star, home to rulers who spoke with pride and armies who marched with arrogance. But on this particular day, the mighty throne felt small for a reason none of them understood yet. Diplomats were shouting, generals were arguing, ambassadors were trading threats over border disputes, and not a single leader suspected that something was creeping toward them through the dark, silent sea of space. Far beyond the star system, at the edge of their sensor field, the first anomaly appeared. Nothing visible, nothing loud, just a strange distortion like a shadow without a source, moving slowly, silently, drifting as if carried by a forgotten wind. The throne's outer sensors flickered, confused, unable to identify the object, and the technicians inside the control tower panicked for a moment before laughing nervously, because surely a small sensor ghost couldn't disturb the strongest Empire alliance in the universe. They reported the reading to the Council Command, who mocked it and dismissed it as a glitch. After all, their sensors were the most advanced in the galaxy, or so they claimed every year during the technology parade. Yet that silent, invisible object kept coming. Not fast, not aggressive, just steady, like something that had already chosen its destination. Straight toward the Galactic Throne. More sensors lit up. Alarms blared. Engineers argued. Scientists insisted the reading was impossible. Commanders laughed in denial. But one elderly sensor specialist, who had served the throne for 90 years, felt something cold crawl up her spine. She whispered to her captain, "Objects that move like this do not come in peace." The captain ignored her. He shouldn't have. The anomaly crossed the final boundary. Every sensor on the throne turned red. Unknown mass detected. The technicians panicked, calling for backup, but the object refused to appear on visual screens, staying invisible, drifting like a ghost through the void. For 10 full minutes, the Galactic Throne's finest minds tried everything to identify it, but all they received was silence. No life signs, no metal readings, no engines, nothing. And then it happened. Without warning, without sound, without a single signal, the invisible object decloaked. The screens went white. Generals froze. Diplomats dropped their tablets. Thousands of soldiers stepped back in fear, because standing in front of them, slowly revealed like a nightmare crawling out of starlight, was a human warship. But not the kind they remembered from ancient records. This one was older, darker, stronger. Its hull made of blackened silver, covered in glowing runic symbols that no alien language system could translate. Symbols that flickered like they were alive. Symbols that felt heavy with ancient meaning. The ship's structure was massive, shaped like a colossal spearhead fused with a cathedral, elegant yet terrifying, as if crafted not by hands but by destiny itself. Its engines burned with a golden flame, soft but powerful, bending gravity and light in ways that made the surrounding space ripple like liquid. Every ruler inside the throne felt a chill. This ship did not match any known human registry. It was not in their archives. It was not in their forbidden records. It was not in any ancient battle logs. It was something else. Something older. Something impossible. The ship didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't activate shields. Didn't aim weapons. It simply existed, and existence alone was enough to terrify the universe. The throne's inner chamber, home to the galaxy's most powerful rulers, fell into absolute silence as the ancient warship hovered above the star, quiet and unmoving, like a sleeping beast that had nothing left to prove. The Empress of the Zereth Dominion fainted. The prime strategist of the Var Empire dropped to his knees. Several ambassadors whispered prayers to forgotten gods. Ships began withdrawing. Fleets shifted away. Even pirate outposts shut down broadcasts, because for the first time in 800 years, a human warship had appeared. But this ship was wrong. Human ships were powerful, yes, but they had design patterns, they had known engineering signatures, they had predictable architecture. This one belonged to none of those categories. It felt like something from before humanity disappeared. Something from before the collapse. Something from a time when humans were rumored to command the stars by will alone. The Galactic Throne sent emergency encryption to every empire. One message only: this ship does not match any human registry. It should not exist. But it existed. Every empire felt regret crawling up their spine. Because they all knew the truth they never said aloud. When humans were still part of the galaxy, they were dangerous. Not because of weapons. Not because of technology. But because humanity had willfire. A force that came from emotion, unity, pain, love, rage, grief, and hope combined into something galaxies could not understand. If this ship came from an era when human willfire was stronger, then the galaxy was standing in front of a relic of unstoppable power. Fleet commanders demanded action, screaming at their officers to prepare shields and weapons. But their ships refused to respond. Engine power dropped by 20%. Weapon charge fell by 40%. Shield generators cracked with errors. Their systems were not malfunctioning, the human ship was suppressing them. Not attacking. Not harming, just existing, and existence alone was enough to overpower everything around it. A small alien patrol cruiser made a bold mistake by approaching the warship. As soon as it crossed a certain distance, its systems died instantly, shutting down violently. The crew panicked. They tried to reboot. Nothing worked. Then a voice echoed inside the cruiser. A human voice. Calm, cold, ancient. Do not approach again. The message lasted 3 seconds. But those 3 seconds shook the galaxy deeper than any war in the past 1,000 years. Because humans were gone. Humanity vanished 800 years ago after a catastrophic collapse. No signals. No survivors. No colonies. No ships. The galaxy classified humanity as extinct. And yet here stood a ship older than those records. A ship that shouldn't exist. A voice that shouldn't exist. A power level no empire could understand. In the throne hall, rulers shouted questions. Is it an AI? Is it human? Is it a ghost? Is it a weapon? But none of them had the courage to ask the real question burning inside every trembling heart. Why has it returned? The warship remained still, unblinking, watching, waiting. Its runic symbols pulsed slowly with golden light, forming patterns that stirred primal instincts inside every species. The throne's oldest historian suddenly cried out loud, I have seen these symbols before. In the forbidden archives, before humanity disappeared. They belonged to the Dawn Fleet. Panic spread like wildfire. The Dawn Fleet was a legend, an ancient human fleet whispered about in stories but never proven real. Some said it vanished during the Great Collapse. Some said it was destroyed. Some said humanity hid it away, but everyone agreed on one thing. If even one Dawn Fleet ship survived, the galaxy was doomed. Because those ships were built not with logic, but with willfire. The historian trembled so hard she could barely speak. This is the warship Astrius, the ship that led the last human exodus. The room froze. Rumors said Astrius vanished into deep space with thousands of human children aboard. And if it returned now, if its ancient captain still lived, if its mission was not yet complete, then the galaxy had just triggered something it could never escape. A diplomat finally whispered the words no one wanted to hear. If that ship has returned, then humanity has returned. And that possibility alone made every empire regret centuries of arrogance, cruelty, manipulation, and betrayal against humanity during their collapse. The ship didn't fire, didn't speak again, didn't move, but the silence it brought was louder than war. Every empire felt the same chilling truth. The galaxy no longer controlled its future. Humanity, long gone, long feared, long forgotten, had returned to claim their place. The ancient human warship Astrius hovered silently, waiting for something or someone, and the galaxy waited with it, shaking in fear, unsure whether this was salvation or judgment. As the ancient human warship Astrius hovered silently above the star, the galaxy fell into a fear so deep that even the strongest empires forgot how to breathe, and every sensor tower across the galactic throne screamed with warnings that made no sense. Energy readings that were older than recorded history, gravitational ripples that bent nearby space like soft cloth, light waves shaking as if afraid. to touch the ship's hull. Inside the throne's command center, generals argued, scientists sweated, ambassadors hid behind guards, and the throne's supercomputer kept repeating the same impossible line, "Unknown human signature detected." No one dared approach the ship, except one foolish patrol commander from the Var Dominion who wanted to show courage for his empire. He flew his cruiser forward, ignoring every warning, believing humans were myths, believing the stories were exaggerated, believing the galaxy's fear was weakness. He pushed closer and closer, and as soon as his ship crossed a silent, invisible boundary around the Astrius, everything inside his cruiser died. Not damaged, not attacked, simply died. Engines froze in mid-burn, weapons collapsed into error, lights shut off like someone blew out hundreds of candles at once. Gravity vanished, sending the crew floating helplessly. Fear spread through the ship like fire spreading through dry wood. The commander shouted orders that no system responded to. The ship drifted powerless, like a toy forgotten in the dark. Then it happened. A voice echoed inside the dead cruiser. Not through speakers, not through radio, but inside the air itself. A human voice, calm, deep, steady. "Do not approach again." That single sentence made every alien heart on board feel like it had stopped beating. The voice carried something they had never heard before. Authority mixed with sorrow, strength mixed with patience. A tone so ancient it felt like it came from a forgotten era of the universe. And then, as quietly as it died, the cruiser's systems resumed functioning. No damage, no errors, just rebooted, as if the ship itself had asked for permission to live again. The commander returned to his fleet trembling so violently that he could not even remove his helmet. When asked what happened, he spoke only 4 words: "Do not anger them." Panic surged across the fleet lines. Battleships slowly retreated. Scout ships moved away. Cargo ships ran for safety. Even pirate vessels shut down broadcasts and hid in asteroid belts. The Astrius didn't move, didn't show weapons, didn't respond again. It simply watched, observing everything with the silent patience of something that had waited centuries to return. In the Galactic throne hall, leaders screamed at each other, "Fire warning shots! Send negotiators! Retreat all fleets! Prepare full attack!" But the oldest of them, the Archon of Ulthar, spoke in a trembling voice that silenced the room. "Fire and we die. Run and they follow. Speak and they judge." No empire wanted to admit it, but everyone knew the truth. The ancient human ship was not acting like a lost relic. It was acting like a guardian, or worse, a judge. The throne finally ordered a cautious first contact broadcast. 100 languages, 1,000 greetings, countless peaceful offerings. The Astrius did not answer. It did not even acknowledge the transmissions. The silence was louder than any threat they could imagine. Meanwhile, small ripples burst from the ship's hull, energy signatures that no alien had ever felt, like soft waves of emotion traveling through the void. The throne's sensors picked it up and panicked. "Willfire spike detected." The term alone made several rulers flinch. Willfire was an old elder myth, a mystical force humans were said to produce from emotion, love, grief, hope, rage. But every modern scientist dismissed willfire as a fairy tale, until now. Across the galaxy, people felt it. A child on the moon of Erethin suddenly cried without knowing why. A soldier on a frontier post felt warmth in his chest like someone protecting him. A scientist on a research station dropped her tools as her heart raced for no logical reason. The Astrius was affecting the emotional field of entire systems. Without firing a shot, without saying a word, without moving a meter, the Galactic throne began to realize something horrifying. This ship wasn't threatening the galaxy. This ship was reminding it that humanity was never weak. The panic reached its peak when the throne's Grand Marshal shouted, "What if this is the first of many ships? What if more are coming?" The hall fell silent. The idea alone was enough to terrify every species. If one ship could shut down fleets, bend gravity, disable weapons, and manipulate emotional energy, what could a fleet do? What could a civilization do? What could all of humanity do if they were truly returning? A trembling ambassador asked, "Why is it here? What does it want?" No one had answers. But deep inside the throne's command tower, an old historian remembered something ancient, something carved into the walls of a forgotten human ruin. She whispered, "When the lost ship returns, it will not come for war. It will come for debt." The room froze. The historian continued, voice shaking, "A debt the galaxy owes humanity." And before anyone could understand what she meant, the Astrius released another soft wave of golden light, warm, calm, emotional, like a heartbeat awakening after 800 years of silence. Every empire felt the same sensation in their chest. Something ancient was rising. Something powerful was remembering. Something human was returning to claim what was once theirs. The warship stayed silent, but its silence carried a promise that made every ruler in the galaxy regret every betrayal, every cruelty, every mockery they had ever shown humanity. The Astrius had awakened, and humanity, long gone, long feared, long whispered about, was coming back. Inside the Galactic throne hall, the atmosphere collapsed into pure chaos the moment the Astrius refused to respond to any broadcast. Hundreds of alien rulers shouted over one another, their voices echoing off the towering crystal pillars, demanding explanations, demanding action, demanding safety, but no one, not the generals, not the scholars, not the scientists, could explain how an ancient human warship had appeared out of nowhere, or why it carried power far beyond anything recorded in galactic history. The Empress of Zareth struck her staff against the floor, demanding silence, but even her authority couldn't control the panic spreading through the room. The ambassadors of the Hezron Republic accused the Var Dominion of provoking the humans. The Var blamed the throne guards for incompetence. The RYTH Federation screamed that they should evacuate immediately, and smaller empires begged for mercy before a war that hadn't even started. In the middle of this storm stood the throne's Grand Council table, a massive stone circle carved from an asteroid older than stars, around which the galaxy's most powerful leaders sat trembling like frightened children. Screens flickered in front of them, showing the Astrius floating in silence, runic symbols glowing softly across its hull, like ancient warnings written in forgotten language. Every time those symbols pulsed, the throne's gravity fluctuated for a split second, making rulers grip their seats, afraid the ship's heartbeat alone could crush them. When the chief scientist tried to analyze the ship structure, her tablet overheated and exploded in her hands, because the Astrius's energy field rejected being scanned. That terrified the council even more. The throne's high commander struck the table and shouted, "We must communicate. Humanity must explain itself." But his voice cracked, betraying fear. The Empress, who had spent her entire life studying ancient human history, stared at the warship's runes with trembling eyes. She whispered, almost to herself, "These symbols, they come from a time before the collapse, from before humanity disappeared." Her words rippled like shockwaves across the hall. "Before the collapse?" someone repeated with a shaking voice. "But that was 800 years ago. Humans from that era cannot be alive," another ruler insisted. "This ship must be controlled by AI." But the Empress shook her head slowly. "No artificial intelligence feels like this. Look at those energy waves. That is not machine logic. That is emotion." The hall fell into a stunned silence. Everyone turned toward her, faces pale. "Emotion?" the Grand Marshal whispered. "How can a ship emit emotion?" The Empress swallowed hard, her voice cracking. "Willfire." A gasp spread across the chamber. Willfire was a myth, an energy said to be born from human emotion, created when humans fought, cried, protected, or sacrificed themselves. Most believed it was a poetic story, not real science. But the Astrius pulsed again, soft golden light, warm, intense, ancient, and the willfire wave rippled across the entire throne, making every ruler's chest tighten with a sensation they didn't recognize: grief. The warship was grieving. The high priest collapsed to his knees, clutching his heart. "I feel sorrow. Why? Why would the ship feel sorrow?" The Empress closed her eyes tightly, trying not to let her voice shake. Because someone hurt humanity. Panic erupted again. The VAR general shouted, "Impossible! Humans are extinct." The Hezron ambassador yelled back, "And yet their warship sits above our star." The Arwedish diplomat trembled. "If this ship carries ancient humans, if they survived, what will they do now?" But the Empress wasn't listening to them. She stared at the runic patterns on the Astrius's hull, her breath trembling as memories from forbidden archives surfaced in her mind. Legends of the Dawn Fleet. A human force created not for war but for protection. A fleet meant to disappear into deep space until humanity needed them. A fleet that supposedly carried humanity's last survivors. A fleet that never returned. Until now. Suddenly, the throne's central screen exploded with light, not from the throne, but from the Astrius. Every ruler screamed. Shields activated. Guards ran forward. A hologram flickered into existence above the council table. And standing inside the hologram was a human. Not a ghost. Not an AI construct. A real human. A man wearing ancient Terran armor, black and gold, with symbols matching the ones on the Astrius. His eyes glowed faint blue, like stars buried under ice. His presence alone silenced the entire hall. His posture was calm, tall, unbroken. For a second, no one in the galaxy remembered how to breathe. The man spoke. His voice was low, steady, controlled, yet carried a weight that struck every heart in the room. "I am Captain Ethan Vale of the human warship Astrius." The room shook with disbelief. The Empress gasped, tears filling her eyes. Ethan Vale continued, "We were not destroyed. We were not lost. We were not forgotten." Each sentence sank like a dagger into the throne's pride. The VAR general stammered, "But humans vanished centuries ago. We believed." The captain cut him off. "You believed what was convenient." His cold stare swept across the rulers, and every one of them felt exposed. "Humanity did not vanish," he said. "We withdrew." A deep silence crushed the hall. "Withdrew? Why? When? How?" Ethan Vale raised his gaze slightly, his expression turning colder, darker. "The galaxy betrayed its own promises. And now," he paused, letting his words carve into their souls, "someone has taken what belongs to us." The Empress whispered shakily, What was taken?" Ethan Vale's eyes burned with a rage so quiet it felt like a storm building behind glass. "A human child." Gasps filled the air. The captain continued, his voice dropping to a tone that made every ruler tremble uncontrollably. "A child of our legacy. A child of the Dawn line. And for that..." The runes on the Astrius pulsed violently in perfect sync with his anger. The Dawn fleet awakens. The hologram vanished. The hall sat frozen. And every ruler realized the galaxy had crossed a line it was never meant to cross. The moment Captain Ethan Vale's hologram vanished, a crushing silence fell across the galactic throne, as if every empire's lungs stopped working at the same time, and before anyone could even process the impossible truth, that ancient humans were alive, awake, and standing above their star. The Astrius began to change, its once calm golden runes brightening into blazing patterns that pulsed like a rising heartbeat, and the entire star system trembled as the ship's dormant systems roared back to life with a power so old, so deep, so impossibly strong that space itself warped around its hull. The throne's supercomputers malfunctioned instantly, screens collapsing into static, gravity distortions shaking the palace's crystal floors, and a cold wave of energy washed through every fleet surrounding the ship, shutting down weapons, freezing engines, and forcing warships to drift like helpless leaves. In a cosmic storm, panic exploded inside the throne hall as rulers screamed for shields, for evacuation, for immediate retreat, but no command responded, because the Astrius was no longer silent. It was awakening from an 800-year slumber, rising like a sleeping titan remembering its purpose. The runes along the hull rearranged themselves in flowing patterns, glowing brighter and brighter until their light reflected off the entire star, turning night into day across nearby planets. The throne's scientists fell to their knees, whispering in terror as their scanners showed impossible readings. Gravity field expanding, dark energy signature increasing, unknown emotional energy surging, physics parameters unstable, and the Empress of Zareth stared helplessly as the star itself flickered in response to the ship's awakening, as if the Astrius carried a gravity of its own that even stellar bodies obeyed. Suddenly, without sound, without warning, the ship unleashed a slow, spiraling wave of golden radiance, not meant to attack but simply to breathe. Yet the effect was catastrophic. Entire fleets were pushed back hundreds of kilometers as if a god had exhaled, their ships spinning uncontrollably, their stabilizers screaming, their crew members shouting prayers in languages older than their civilizations. One warship fired a reflexive warning shot in fear, but the bolt of plasma evaporated the moment it crossed the Astrius's light, converted into harmless dust, erased from existence like a mistake corrected by the universe itself. The Thornian warlord collapsed to the floor, sobbing, "This is not technology. This is something else, something alive." And indeed it felt alive, because the willfire radiating from the Astrius surged with emotion, rage, grief, resolve, waves of feeling that made every ruler clutch their chest as if someone else's sorrow had entered their heart. The High Commander shouted, "It's reacting. It's responding to the captain's anger." And he was right. The Astrius pulsed brighter with every memory it carried, every wound humanity suffered, every betrayal the galaxy committed, every child they lost. The runes reached peak brightness, the golden flame around the engines thickened into a storm, and then the entire ship drifted forward. Just a few meters, a barely noticeable movement, but enough to make every empire scream, because a ship that could collapse gravity by existing had just chosen to move. Shields across the throne shattered like thin glass. Buildings cracked. The star trembled. The Empress tried to speak, but her voice broke as she whispered, "This ship, it moves like it remembers the galaxy owes it something." Then, without warning, the ship finally spoke. Not through speakers, not through holograms, but through reality itself, a soft voice vibrating in every atom across the system. A human voice heavy with both warning and unbearable sorrow. "Do not interfere." The words were gentle, but the power behind them made planets quake and empires regret every arrogance they ever held. The commanders in the fleet line froze, unable to speak or breathe, because those three simple words carried the weight of an entire species' grief and resolve. Do not interfere, because the Astrius had a mission older than the empires watching it. A purpose burned into its hull, a vow carved into its soul. A child was missing, a bloodline stolen, promise broken, and the ship was no longer sleeping. It was awake, awake and angry, awake and grieving, awake and unstoppable. The throne hall stood in absolute silence as the truth settled over the galaxy like a dark storm. Humanity had not shown even 1% of its true strength yet, and already the universe was trembling. If this was just the awakening of one warship, what would the galaxy face when the entire Dawn fleet rose? The Astrius drifted forward again, slow and deliberate, the golden runes burning like suns across its hull, and every empire felt the same sinking, chilling realization in their bones. The galaxy was no longer watching a ship, it was watching judgment approach. As the Astrius glowed brighter and the galaxy stood frozen in terror, the throne hall's air suddenly shifted, turning heavy and cold, and before any ruler could scream or run, the giant crystal walls dimmed, the lights flickered, and a single blinding pulse of golden energy struck the center of the chamber, then vanished, leaving behind a silent, hovering hologram of a human man who looked so ancient, so powerful, and so heartbreakingly calm that every empire felt their knees weaken. The man stood tall in black and gold Terran armor from an era long before the collapse, his posture unbroken, his presence commanding the entire hall without raising a hand or a weapon, and his eyes, cold blue fire wrapped in kindness and grief, swept across every trembling ruler like a quiet storm remembering everything that was taken from him. No one dared speak. No one dared breathe. The hologram did not flicker like modern tech. It stood solid, alive, as if this wasn't a projection but the man himself stepping through time. And when he finally spoke, his voice was so calm, so steady, so filled with restrained sorrow that even the walls seemed to lean closer to hear him. "I am Captain Ethan Vale of the Terran Dawn Fleet." Every ruler flinched. The Dawn Fleet was a myth, whispered in forbidden temples, feared in ancient songs, believed to be humanity's last, strongest fleet that disappeared into deep space before the collapse. The Empress choked on her breath. Generals stepped back like children caught in a lie. Ethan continued slowly, his voice neither angry nor cold, just heartbreakingly controlled. We never died. The hall exploded into gasps. His second sentence shook the universe harder than any weapon. We were never lost. A ruler collapsed to the floor, crying in disbelief. We only vanished because we chose to. Silence fell like a cosmic hammer. Ethan's gaze tightened. You believed humanity was extinct. You believed we were erased. You believed we were too weak to survive. His expression darkened with ancient disappointment, the kind that burns deeper than rage. But humanity does not disappear. Humanity endures. The willfire radiating from the Astrius outside pulsed in sync with his words, sending waves of emotion through every being in the hall, making even the coldest rulers feel the weight of human loss, human strength, human pain. Ethan lifted his head slightly, eyes turning colder. We left your galaxy because it lost its honor, because corruption ruled your throne, because you turned a blind eye when the weak suffered, and we refused to be part of it. Several rulers lowered their heads in shame. Ethan continued, voice dropping into a tone so soft it felt like the calm before a solar flare. But now, someone has touched what belongs to us. Everyone froze. A diplomat stuttered, What do you mean? What was taken? Ethan's jaw tightened with grief so sharp it cut through the room like ice. A child. The hall erupted in disbelief, confusion, fear. A child? A single child brought back an ancient human warship? A single child awakened the Dawn Fleet? The Empress whispered shakily, Whose child? Ethan's expression cracked for the first time, revealing a sorrow so deep it felt older than stars. A child of the Dawn Line. Every ruler flinched. The Dawn Line, the rumored bloodline of the last ancient human leaders, children protected by humanity's greatest warriors, the last heirs of the old Terran legacy. Ethan stepped closer, his hologram towering over the table. She is the last of her blood, the last memory of what humanity sacrificed. And she was taken. His voice shook, not with anger, but with grief that made every heart tremble. The VAR general tried to speak, but Ethan cut him off with a single glance. You did not protect her. The hall felt that sentence like a blade carved into their soul. Ethan continued, You did not guard what humanity gave you. You did not honor the promise made before the collapse. The Empress covered her mouth, whispering, We believed humans were gone. Ethan's eyes hardened like steel cooled in sorrow. You believed what was convenient. His voice lowered, becoming dangerously calm. And now, for your failure. The Dawn Fleet awakens. Outside, the Astrius roared with golden willfire, its runes blazing like an ancient sun returning to life. The throne shook. The fleets trembled. The galaxy collapsed into fear. Ethan gave the final message, each word a cosmic truth carved into destiny itself. We did not return for war. The hall exhaled in shaky relief. We returned for the child. Relief died instantly. And we will not leave without her. The hologram vanished in a golden flash, and every empire realized an absolute paralyzing terror. The galaxy wasn't dealing with a ghost of humanity. It was dealing with humanity's last, strongest, ancient protectors, and they had awakened for blood. The galactic throne had faced thousands of wars, rebellions, invasions, cosmic disasters, and political storms, but nothing, not even the fall of civilizations, had ever crushed it the way Captain Ethan Vale's last words did. And when his hologram vanished, leaving only the echo of "We will not leave without her," the grand hall collapsed into a silence so thick it felt like time itself had stopped breathing. Every ruler stared at each other with wide, terrified eyes because none of them had ever heard of a Dawn Line. None of them had ever imagined humanity still guarded a royal bloodline, and none of them knew what the galaxy had lost 800 years ago when humanity disappeared. Before anyone could recover, the screens around the hall flickered again. this time showing the Astrius from a closer angle, its runic symbols flowing across the hull like living fire, forming ancient Terran shapes older than any empire in the room. A terrified scientist gulped and whispered, "The ship is opening its memory core." And then the galaxy learned the truth. A stream of ancient recordings began to play, slow, haunting, unbearably sorrowful, showing humanity's final hours before the Great Collapse. The hall watched as ancient human cities burned under a cosmic virus no one in the present day had ever seen. Towers fell. Skies turned black. Children cried in bunkers. Scientists begged for more time. Engineers worked as if their hands were aflame. Soldiers carried the wounded even when their own bodies were breaking. Ethan Vale appeared in those memories. Much younger, covered in blood and dust, carrying 3 crying children in his arms while explosions tore the sky apart behind him. "Evacuate the Dawn Line!" someone screamed in the memory. The rulers watched in horror as soldiers rushed a group of 20 children, each wearing glowing bracelets, into the Astrius. The recordings zoomed in on the bracelets. Golden symbols, identical to the runes on the ship's hull. The Empress gasped. Those children. Those were the heirs of ancient Terran leaders. Ethan's voice from the past echoed through the hall. "Protect them. If the galaxy falls, they are our future. If humanity falls, they are our memory." Modern rulers trembled as they watched humanity's final evacuation. The Astrius launched into deep space with the Dawn Line on board, its engines burning brighter than stars, while the dying Earth behind it lit the sky with flames and heartbreak. Then came the moment that broke the galaxy. One by one, the children evacuated to safe zones. Some survived. Some didn't. But the last girl, the smallest, wearing a faded white dress, held Ethan's hand and whispered, "Will you come back for us, when it's safe?" Ethan knelt, placed his hand on her head, and said, "I promise, humanity will rise again. You will not be alone." The memory ended. The Empress covered her face, sobbing. Generals bowed their heads. Scientists whispered prayers. Every empire felt the weight of that ancient promise, and realized the Dawn Line wasn't just a bloodline. It was humanity's last hope. The screens shifted again, showing modern footage. A hidden criminal syndicate. One the galaxy ignored. One the throne refused to confront. Kidnapping a small human girl from a remote outpost, her terrified face identical to the child in the memory, wearing the same Dawn Line bracelet. The throne hall erupted in horror. Someone shouted, "Who allowed this? Who attacked her colony?" Another ruler screamed, "Why didn't we protect them?" Ethan's voice returned, cold and sharp. "Because you forgot humanity existed." The rulers trembled as they watched the kidnapping footage replay. Zorith mercenaries, masked and hooded, dragging the small girl through a portal, her bracelet glowing desperately as if calling out to every last human alive. Then the truth delivered the final blow. The Zorith Syndicate didn't kidnap her by accident. They kidnapped her because the galaxy believed humans were extinct, and a human child was worth more than a son. Ethan's calm narration continued. Our sensors detected her distress call. That call awakened the Astrius. And when the Astrius awakens, so do we. Panic gripped the hall. The Arwedic minister choked. So the ship is alive? The Empress shook her head. No. The ship is carrying the emotions of every human it protected. Their willfire keeps it alive. Their promises give it purpose. Ethan's voice finished the truth. We built the Dawn Fleet for one purpose: protect the future of our kind. And now our future has been taken. The willfire pulses from the Astrius intensified, shaking the entire star system until even distant planets felt the pressure. Rulers screamed. Guards stumbled. Alarms blared. The ship wasn't angry, it was heartbroken, and its heartbreak shook the cosmos. A trembling ambassador whispered the final fear. If they built an entire hidden fleet, if one ship has this much power, what happens when the rest of them awaken? The Astrius answered for him. A new pulse erupted from the ship, so bright it illuminated the galaxy map projected above the table. Hundreds, thousands, and millions of golden dots flickered across deep space. Sleeping ships, hidden ships, human ships. The The dawn fleet, and every dot pulsed with willfire waking. The captain's final warning repeated across the hall. You took one child. Now you face all of us. The galaxy collapsed into fear, because humanity wasn't returning alone. Humanity was returning with an entire rising army. The moment the Dawn Fleet's thousands of golden dots appeared on the star map, the galaxy felt its soul crack with fear, but the true terror began when the Astrius moved, slow, deliberate, unstoppable, like a living judgment drifting across the void. The ship didn't fire weapons, didn't activate shields, didn't roar or threaten. It simply advanced toward Zorith territory with a heartbeat made of pure willfire, and every empire watching felt the same suffocating pressure growing in their chest as if the universe itself was bracing for what was coming. The Zorith Syndicate, known for their cruelty, arrogance, and shadow empire of crime, finally realized they had made the worst mistake in cosmic history by kidnapping a child of the Dawn Line, and in panic they ordered thousands of mercenaries, warlords, and assassins to gather around their fortress world Aerithus Prime. A place carved out of black stone and dark energy where laws didn't exist and pain was currency. But even their massive defense grid began to glitch and melt the moment the Astrius entered the system, its golden runes glowing like ancient suns awakening after centuries. The Zorith flagship fired the first shot, or rather attempted to, but the plasma lance never left the barrel. It dissolved into shimmering dust before the weapon even ignited, and the entire flagship shut down like a candle smothered under a storm. Across the universe, millions watching the broadcast gasped in disbelief. The Astrius still hadn't fired a single weapon. It didn't need to. Human revenge was coming in absolute silence. The closer the Astrius drifted, the more chaotic the Zorith defenses became. Turrets melted, mines collapsed, drones fell out of the sky like broken toys, and warships screamed error after error as their engines refused to function under the weight of the human ship's willfire. Inside the throne hall, rulers trembled as they saw something unbelievable. Human marines deploying from the Astrius. Not through drop pods, but through shimmering golden corridors of light that bent space itself, allowing soldiers to walk across the void directly onto enemy platforms. These soldiers didn't yell or show anger. Their movements were silent, precise, and filled with a calm fury that made even seasoned warlords feel like small insects facing a storm. Every Marine wore armor etched with runic symbols, carrying weapons that didn't fire bullets or beams but pulses of willfire that disabled enemies without killing them. Because humanity didn't come to exterminate the galaxy, they came to retrieve what was theirs. When the Zorith warlords tried to activate their Starkiller cannon, a weapon capable of melting moons, the cannon overheated in 3 seconds and blew itself apart, not from human interference, but because the Astrius's emotional gravity field destabilized every atom of violence around it. In the middle of this collapsing battlefield, Commander Ethan Vale materialized through a golden corridor, stepping onto Aerithus Prime's Black Fortress platform like an ancient king returning to his throne. Zorith soldiers rushed him from all sides, but the moment they entered within 10 meters, their bodies froze in place, trembling uncontrollably as invisible willfire pressed on their minds, crushing their will without touching their flesh. Ethan didn't even look at them. His eyes were focused on one thing only, finding the stolen human child. Human Marines cut through the fortress with emotion-powered tools that sliced stone like paper until they finally reached a prison chamber deep underground, where the little girl sat trapped inside a glowing cage, her Dawn Line bracelet flickering weakly as if whispering for help. The moment Ethan stepped inside, the bracelet lit up with blinding golden light, forming a protective shield around her. The girl looked up with tear-filled eyes and whispered, "You came back." Ethan knelt, his voice breaking for the first time in centuries. "I promised I would." The willfire around them exploded outward in a wave so powerful it shattered the upper levels of the fortress, sending Zorith soldiers flying into the dust without harming a single innocent life. The universe felt that explosion. Billions watching felt their hearts burn. Even the star outside flickered. Ethan lifted the child in his arms and began walking out of the fortress with the calm of a man who had just ended a war by keeping a promise. Outside, the Astrius hovered above the battlefield like a golden judgment, its runes burning brighter than ever. As Ethan stepped onto the extraction platform with the child safe in his arms, the fortress of Aerithus Prime collapsed behind him. Not from weapons, but from the shockwave of humanity's willfire. The syndicate fell in minutes. No empire had ever achieved that. No empire ever could. The child clung to Ethan's armor and whispered, "Are we going home?" Ethan looked at her softly, then turned his gaze toward the stars. "Yes," he said. "All of humanity is going home." The throne watched in silence. No one dared to speak, because they understood a truth deeper than fear. This was not human rage. This was human love. And nothing in the universe could stand against that as the Astrius carried the Dawn Child back into the stars. Every empire bowed their head in silent acceptance. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again as the Astrius carried the rescued Dawn Line Child through the fractured remains of Arethus Prime. The entire galaxy fell into a trembling silence, watching in awe and terror as the ancient human warship rose like a golden star drifting through shadows. And every empire understood that they were witnessing a moment that would be written on the first page of the next era, because humanity hadn't just returned, they had reminded the universe of who they truly were. The galactic throne, normally loud with arrogance and politics, now sat frozen, rulers staring at the holographic feed of Ethan Vale standing on the command deck of the Astrius, the Dawn Child resting against his armor, her bracelet glowing brighter than it ever had, pulsing with a quiet, warm light that spread across the ship like a heartbeat reconnecting after a long sleep. And then, as if answering that heartbeat, the Dawn Fleet map above the throne lit up again. Thousands of hidden human warships flickering awake across deep space, glowing dots turning into bright golden flames, forming patterns like constellations written by ancient gods. Each ship older than empires, filled with willfire older than stars, prepared for movement after 8 centuries of silence. The rulers shouted in panic, "We must negotiate. We must beg forgiveness. We must hide." But no one could hide from what was coming, because the truth was carved into the Astrius's hull in burning runes. Humanity never vanished. Humanity was waiting. Just when the throne thought the nightmare was over, that the child's rescue meant the Dawn Fleet would return quietly into the void, Ethan Vale turned toward the galaxy-wide broadcast, his hologram appearing above every major world, every spaceport, every ship, every station. His voice was soft, but it cracked mountains. The Dawn Fleet rises not for conquest, but for balance. Billions of beings felt the weight of that sentence settle over their hearts. Ethan continued, his words slow, steady, carrying the sorrow of an entire species. "For centuries, we watched your galaxy from afar. We saw corruption rise. We saw cruelty grow. We saw injustice born in the places we once fought to protect." His voice dropped into a deeper, colder tone. "We did not intervene then, because we believed the throne would guide the galaxy with honor." The Empress lowered her head, tears forming. Ethan's eyes hardened, filled with memories the galaxy could barely imagine. "But you allowed children to be stolen. You allowed bloodlines to be hunted. You allowed darkness to rule in your name." Outside, the Astrius's willfire flared, golden storms spiraling around its hull, crackling through space. Ethan raised the Dawn Child gently in his arms, her bracelet glowing like a small sun. "This child is safe, but she is not the last. There are others." The galaxy froze. Other Dawn Line children? Other heirs of ancient humanity? Ethan's final words struck like a cosmic hammer. "The Dawn Fleet will search every system, every world, every empire." His gaze sharpened. "Those who sheltered our children will be protected." He paused. The whole galaxy held its breath. "Those who harmed them," the runes turned blood red for a single heartbeat, "will face humanity." Just as the broadcast ended, the star map above the throne flashed violently. One of the golden dots, representing a hidden Dawn Fleet ship, suddenly dimmed, then blinked out. Gone. Destroyed. Ethan's eyes widened. This was not part of their plan. Someone had attacked a Dawn Fleet sleeper ship. Someone powerful. Someone bold. The Astrius scanned the region the moment the dot vanished. A single haunting signal echoed through deep space. Cold, mechanical, layered with ancient hatred. A signal no one in the galaxy recognized. Except Ethan Vale. His face turned pale. His voice cracked for the first time. No, it cannot be them. Before any empire could ask who them meant, a second signal arrived, stronger, darker, older than the collapse, older than the throne, older than the Dawn Fleet itself. A name written in dead language flashed across every human screen. The Eclipsed. The Empress gasped, collapsing to her knees. Some rulers screamed. Others fled the hall. The Eclipsed, an enemy older than the galaxy's history, a force believed to be myth, a species that erased entire universes in ancient wars, a threat humanity once fought alone before going silent forever. And now they were back. The Astrius engines roared, willfire erupting like a newborn supernova. Ethan held the Dawn Child close, turned to his fleet, and whispered one sentence. One sentence that made the galaxy understand the war wasn't ending. It was beginning. Dawn Fleet, prepare for the true enemy. As the Astrius accelerated into the dark edge of the universe, golden runes blazing, the child whispered, "Are we going into danger?" Ethan placed a hand on her head. "No, we are going home." And with a blinding flash of light, the ancient human warship vanished, leading the Dawn Fleet toward a darkness older than destiny. TOB continued,